I was supposed to kind of say all of this stuff that's on this in this presentation yesterday, but as you heard, I got stuck because of a combination of technical and terrorist threats. So I guess I found it very frustrating, but in the end, it probably makes sense that we should respect, should we say, the technical realities of airplanes and take terrorism seriously. So in that sense, that's life, as they say. But I had prepared a kind of a shorter version of my presentation. This longer version here, I don't think I should present now. It's better that I present the shorter version and that we have a discussion. And what I'm going to talk more about is more along the lines you talked about, Ray, about learning and things like that. But this longer version that you can load down is the same as is, should we say, also covered in a new book manuscript that's coming out at Cambridge University Press on the business school of the future. And of course, when I listened to you, Ray, I said to myself, my God, I mean, this professor knows everything about, and I know nothing. But I have been CEO and president of various business schools for 25 years, and it's basically gone very well. So if that counts for anything, at least that's what's in the book. So, but Ray, you promised to send me some stuff, so I'm working on that. But is that okay that I concentrate then on a shorter topic so we can discuss, which I think is more meaningful for all of us? Okay, I'm seeing nodding heads here, so that's good. But basically what I like to do is to then concentrate on the pedagogy. And basically there are 6 kind of messages which are not covered on this, but so you have to pay attention. The first thing has to do with the fact that we are seeing very different backgrounds of the students and of the realities today. And I think we are sitting here in, I don't know how old is Brasenose College, about 600 years. And it strikes me that there's a lot of tradition here. But, you know, today's students, and I see an entrepreneur here, you know, they are much more restless. And they want to debate and discuss and not take things as given as we did in the past. And today's students, I think we heard that this morning, they understand that to have a good job means a hell of a lot. So this whole issue of studying part-time has come back into vogue, so to speak. You know, we call that, you know, in Switzerland we call it Fachhochschulen. And you know, this whole thing about understanding that we must learn, but at the same time we must keep our careers. That, I think, is a totally different thing from in the past, where we could have the luxury of taking off a few years to study full-time and then go back. I remember when I was a student, I took it easy and had a good time and didn't worry about the job until afterwards. Those things are gone, I think. And of course, we also have to keep in mind that the computer makes a hell of a difference, a personal computer. We don't like, unless you come from the Open University, I think we have certain questions regarding learning via the computer alone all the time. But I think we have no questions when it comes to, should we say, learning some of the more basic stuff on the computer on our own, so that we are prepared to discuss more interesting, cutting-edge stuff in the classroom later on. So I think that's a very big difference, and the modern students like to work on a computer and like to be fast on the computer to do that basic learning. And then on top of that too, you know, in the past we had professors who were good at a little bit of that and that and that, and I think we see more and more that we now have specialists who are professors who are really good at some things, And then they are working, say, in consulting firms, in businesses, other areas. And you see a university today or a business school today, which is much more a mix of, to say, experts coming together, experts that work part-time. And I'm going to get to that, because those part-time experts who are really specialists, they are perhaps particularly good at dealing with leading discussions with the students having to do with dilemmas, cutting edge stuff, not kind of pretending that you know something as a specialist professor, which you simply don't know. So I think that's a big difference. And maybe I'm talking here totally wrong, given that people who are professors here at Oxford are supposed to know everything, which I quite frankly doubt. So that's the first thing. So I think this means that we have a dramatically changed reality in today's business schools and today's, should we say, theater of higher education, because of these factors that I mentioned. I then think that what makes sense is to go back to something which has been tried out by several. I mean, we have, for instance, the old Harkness table stuff in the 20s and 30s in the US. Both tried out at high school level, Philip Exeter Academy, but also at Yale University. So this is not bullshit. And we have a whole slew of research which underscores the power of this kind of more workshop-oriented, teaching, discussion-oriented learning. And I will not cite the things. We can deal that if you want to do that. You can look at the book. But basically, it says that you as a student get your homework, the basics to study at home, 3 or 4 articles and some stuff that you load up on the computer, maybe some testing questions and things like that. Then you come to say, a weekend workshop, 2 very long days, and you discuss with the professor key dilemmas. And that means that you learn from each other. And you learn from the professor. The professor is more of a, should we say, a chief conductor or a catalyst, and not the old one-way communicator of the truth that some of the professors in the past have been trained to be. So there's a hell of a big difference for the professor too. And I think what's interesting is that this also has huge implications for should we say, the layout of the university or the business school, and I mean, Winston Churchill probably said something about everything, but he also said something here that the building shapes the organization, and the organization shapes the building, and well said, because that means that now the modern university, the modern business school, has flat rooms like here, but not these types of tables. 5 round tables, 7 people around each table. Round tables so people can see each other. Only 7 people so people can hear each other. And the professor then maybe lays out some of the questions, key dilemmas, for 1/3 of the time. Then maybe another 1/3 of the time is spent discussions around each table, again in the room so they can hear each other's buzz, not in separate study rooms that we for a while had at IMD where you can sleep for 1/3 of the time. That's not good enough. And then 1/3 of the time at the end, sharing open these questions. And what we found at IMD and at the Lorange Institute, and this is documented widely, is that you have a dramatically more heavy learning. So to say it in an unscientific way, in 2 days of learning, you get the same done as normally in 5 days. So it's a hell of a different productivity gain. And that's not all, but it looks like what's kind of stuck here is also better. So what we did was to have the students go through a pre-test exam, pre-session exam, and come up with their understanding that they had internalized the groundwork and their preliminary understanding of some of these key dilemmas, and then a post-workshop exam. What did they think about that? So you had, should we say, the prior and the posterior, that you could see that something had happened to these people. Obviously, this should be retested a year or 2 or 3 later to see how much was kind of stuck in a more permanent way. That was not done. But a lot of research of various sorts that give verifications that this is highly relevant. And as I said, for you as a politician who have to work on should we say, budgetary allowances and things like that, the good news is that you don't need these enormous campuses anymore. It's relatively small facilities. So for instance, this facility here, you probably will see a much more modest layout in this kind of new setting than you do here. But I think that's interesting. Because, as you know, higher education is becoming very, very expensive. The reason I'm talking about this is not to say that we do this to save money, but that's kind of a benefit that you can do better work at lower cost. As we know, that's dramatically different from what we are taught to believe. Better work means higher cost. Here it means better work at lower cost. So that's quite dramatic and appealing, I would think, to politicians also. Basically then we looked at, please, oh, here's the coffee. Oh God, I'm more or less done now. So I need coffee to keep going. So you know, thank you. So that means that, how does that happen? Well, first of all, we discussed this a little bit, Ray. The problem is that many professors don't like this. You know, they are used to kind of rambling on. They have their notes, and some of these notes are 10, 15, 20 years old, but they will disagree with that, but that's the reality. And they don't like questions. They like to ramble on. And in a sense, it's a one-way communication style, which has been tried out for a long, long time. And in a sense, an element of brilliance. And of course, the learning thing, I think we heard that from you, Ray, has a lot more to do with learning through seeing things, as Marcel Proust said, as you told us, with different eyes. So here you have 35 students with different backgrounds, different eyes, who share on this, and it becomes a different kind of learning experience. But many professors don't like this, and to kind of, by the way, in our experiment, we took away the pulpit from the professor, so he or she had to walk around without notes. And they said, we must have our notes and our view graphs. And then I said, you are paid to understand what you are supposed to do, not to kind of rattle this paper and show these damn things. You have to understand what you're doing. And some of them then left. But the others kind of saved up. And as I said, this can better be done when you do have specialist part-time professors who understand their particular topics. So that's interesting. The second thing is that the final thing is that the culture of the educational institution itself probably has a lot to do with how to make this happen. And there are 4 aspects there I want to share with you based on my 25 years of experience as a leader of academic institutions. The first one is that it seems to me, it looks like it's extremely important that we have, should we say, a we open culture in the organization. That the various or professors understand that we are here together, and that the various professors understand, and we talked a little bit about this, right? Understand that you all spending time on politicking and backbiting and should we say mobilizing negative energy through these kind of discussions is not necessarily part of this type of culture. An open culture where learning becomes the drive, the kind of the raison d'être is what we want. So the second issue, and you will not like this, particularly politicians, but of course. Democracy is good, and Churchill said something about that too. But in my humble opinion, you've got to have some guts at the top to run an organization, a school, with some kind of top-down inputs. And if you have lack of that, which you have in most universities, where you elect the boss to be kind of a quiet and meek person, then you have a hell of a lot of debate and nothing happening. There has to be a top-down, bottom-up balance to make this happen, and this has to be part of the agenda from the top. And that brings me to the third issue, that I think that to should we say, think about improved pedagogy in such a way that we try to improve things in a cost-beneficial way. That's really that's really an agenda of the entire academic institution. And if you don't have that broad buy-in of that, it becomes very difficult to make this happen. So I think that's becoming a key issue. How in hell do you work on your faculty and on your staff to make sure that they see the importance of improved pedagogy at a reasonable cost? So that comes that. And the last point I'm making is that clearly you need to have some check on quality. So there has to be some assessment of, should we say, the professor's ability to work as orchestrators as opposed to ramblers, and some assessment of exams, pre-tests, computer work, etc., etc. So, in other words, the fourth cultural element, and the final one, is that there has to be some commitment to, should we say, quality control. So with that, let me stop there, and then this one you can just download on your own. I don't need to go through that. Or you nodded your head earlier on that. So now we can discuss this for a little while, and then we can go to lunch. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. You started off saying that the reality of students has changed.
I think so.
Expectations, but the teaching method of teaching through workshops.
Yep.
It's becoming more and more common to see it.
Yeah.
Especially in continuing and executive training.
Yeah.
But it's not new.
No.
And it's always been effective. So why combine the fact that, yes, technology changes our behavior, our expectations, especially for the younger generations, but the good teaching has always been good teaching.
Yep.
Through a workshop environment or mentoring environment.
Yeah, I agree with you, Olivier, and maybe this is kind of far-fetched, but my sense is that we are talking more of degree of change rather than kind of from A to Z. And I think that it is important to keep in mind that, much more of the basic work done via the computer. So to understand how to, should we say, put snippets of pre-work onto the computer, not necessarily full articles. Again, you can do a hell of a lot there, some questions, some pre-testing, etc., so that you come to class, to the workshop, much more up to speed, and can in that sense work on a set of key questions. I think that's a big difference. I think another big difference is that, as I said, the professors who lead those workshops are true specialists. So you don't have some, for instance, you may know that I've done a lot of business in shipping, and I'm a fairly successful ship owner, and I understand the whole issue of in, out, long, short in shipping. And there's no point to have somebody talk to the student about that and lead a discussion on that unless he or she has some credibility in that area. So I think that's important, that the specialist professor comes to the workshop discussion with some credibility. But you're right. I mean, if you take the Harkness table stuff, which was pioneered by Phillips Exeter Academy in the 1920s. That was pioneered by Edward Harkness, who was head of Exxon, it was Standard Oil or Ohio or whatever it was at that time before it was broken up. And again, he then went on from Phillips Exeter Academy to Yale, where this was very much becoming part of what Yale was doing. And as we all know, Yale is a fairly well-reputable university. So, but you're right. But it's back to basic. But what I'm against, I used to be president of Norwegian School of Economics. And we had there a very famous guy, Professor Niels Torp, who also built the British Airways headquarters at Heathrow, designed. And he said, Peter, you are a total, complete idiot. It's not only slow up here, but it's solid wood. And I said, why? What have I done? And he said, don't you understand that by increasing the pitch of the classroom, you get twice as many students in? What I didn't tell him is that as a professor, I can only then see the first 10 and the others are out of reach. And obviously, then after a session or two, they don't come. So what I'm trying to say with this is that many of the universities are built on a business model where you fill in big hordes of students and you lecture to hundreds at a time. Effect. That's what I don't want. And that's where this comes in. So in a sense, that's also different from the university, the business school of the future is only workshops, no plenary big classes. So, but you're right, it's a matter of degree, not totally new stuff. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, hello. Hello, I'm Heather Pickard, Associate Dean for the Fashion Business School at the London College of Fashion.
Great.
I'm just interested in your earlier comment in the session back in Oxford Martin about the sort of rise of the Asian business school.
Yes.
And interested to know your thoughts about whether this model you're talking about transfers to
Yes.
Asia, or is there another model that will be prevalent?
No, it seems to. And as you know, one of the things that we think is that the Chinese, I know the Chinese better than other groups of Asians. We have this idea that the Chinese are good copiers at best, but they are very slow, particularly when it comes to creative stuff. And as I think you know, and as I know, that's not true. They're extremely creative. And if they're not, I guess within these four walls, I can say thanks God for a while. So, but they are picking up very fast, and you see this in full bloom. For instance, Siebes, where I'm honorary president, is ranking meaningless, but they are ranked by FT as number one, not only in China but in Asia. And this is all they're doing, these STEM workshops. You know, so not all, but a lot of it. So that's kind of disturbing, you know, that our competitors are working on this already. Go ahead.
So I started helping here in Oxford. I'm
Yep.
Teaching. Sorry. Okay,
Oh.
I just wanted to help youngsters to build up themselves.
Great.
And,
Yep.
but unfortunately, not a lot of schools and colleges and universities were happy with me, so
No.
I went to UAE.
Yep.
And it's been a year. I've started 3 schools now.
Yep.
And all those schools, we teach them how to have confidence in you and how to start
Sure.
a small business, not a big
Good.
business, just something
Good.
small. And just because of that, I'm the only woman, again, I'm the only woman in construction here, and I'm only
Great.
woman in construction there as well. But I'm trying to...
I love it.
But I'm trying to take the women out and making sure that they shouldn't be scared of men. You know, men are very lovely creatures, you know, if we know them. I've been working with them for all those years. And to make sure that they go out and do something like that.
Exactly.
So in my workshops, as you said it again, we need the right people on the top. And for that, you have to have a good budget. You know, a lot of places in England, I'm sorry to say, their budget comes up and they don't hire those sort of people.
That's right.
So we need to talk to someone here as well, that if my business is doing so well in Dubai and in UAE, I'm going to Saudi Arabia now, I'm going to
Sure.
Kuwait and Qatar now, we can do it here as well.
Absolutely.
But nobody listens to me, so
No.
therefore, you know, I mean, Chris was very kind and he invited me here, and we thought we will just talk to you all and, you know, see what you guys can think about it.
But I think you're absolutely right. And in a sense, I think what you are alluding to is the fact that much of what's going on is taking place much more now in a networked reality. So I don't know your company well. I only met you 10 minutes ago. Thank you, I will. But let me give you an example of some of the problems. I had a shipping company and a few hundred employees, including 25 at the headquarters. And then I said, guys, ladies and guys, because there's several ladies, it's time to sell. In, out, long, short. And of course, they said, no, you're crazy, Peter. We not want to sell. Of course, I knew that they didn't want to lose their jobs. So I said, okay. But then I started systematically to develop our network strategy. So, for instance, as chief financial officer, he turned out to be the same person as the head of the largest lender, my bank contact. And I said to him, let me tell you some good news. As of today, you are my CFO. He said, no, I'm your banking lender. I said, that is okay. If you don't want to be my CEO, I will pay you everything back and go across the street. Oh, so he turned out to be the best CFO I ever had. So things like that. At the end, I only had 4 people in the office, and I was able to sell. But I had, of course, a network of others that I could work with. That's what you have been doing.
Very important.
Yes.
Dealing with people and to
Of course.
sell. It's a business. You know?
Exactly. If you have this classical hierarchical organization, there's too much of that in the UK, then things go too slow. This network organization helps you to move fast.
I mean, it took me years to go around in whole of Oxford and London and Birmingham. Everybody said, oh, no, we're not interested. No, we're not interested. We've got our own areas. We're not interested. I said, I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
But went there and straight away, started.
But this is very important, this whole issue of, should we say, preparing our students through these workshops for much more of a networked reality. And you, I mean, you I don't know, in the good old days, you got a job and you stayed there for the rest of your life. The Japanese apparently still do that. That's not the way most of us are working anymore. We work at home and we shift jobs, we work ad hoc. Very different from before. Go ahead.
Here's a brief one on the question I had, and that's, these days you're seeing more and more support from the careers service at Oxford University, and other universities are doing the same. With alumni moving careers all the time,
absolutely,
how important is that going to be? And specifically for me, how do you think business schools can help people in entrepreneurship?
Oh, very good point. In other words, one of the key assets, I think, of the modern university is the alumni. That's a network. I think it's extremely important. And again, in good old days, the alumni were kind of drinking buddies. That's not the way it is anymore. Alumni are critical to make this whole thing work. That's a network, people, par excellence. Go ahead, Ray.
Can I ask about knowledge generation?
Yep.
We've been talking about
absolutely
how we transmit knowledge to
yep
students and so on. In a globalized society,
yep
what travels is research. College presidents know this, that
absolutely
your prestige is not so much on how well you teach, it's how well you generate knowledge.
Yep.
This is why
absolutely
we revere
yep
Ivy League universities like this one. Academics know that too. You can be a brilliant teacher and people in the next department don't even know that. Whereas if you write a brilliant research paper, nowadays with digital transmission, people all around the world know that in every university.
No, you're right.
So I was wondering, in a business school of the future, how you would see the importance of that. I mean, what is the expectation on these part-time specialists to generate knowledge?
Yep.
In terms of the prestige of the Zurich Institute. Cardinal Newman, who founded the University of Ireland, was quite emphatic that those colleges should not do research, because he said if they start doing that, they'll not get their students. 150 years later, that's exactly what they do.
So absolutely. I know.
Have a view on this?
Yes, I do. And I think it's a very key point. And this is discussed in great detail in the book. But basically, let me say it this way. I think, because I don't have research evidence, I think that good teaching and good research go together. I think that to really understand what the key dilemmas are, you've got to have some good research. You simply cannot pick that up like that. So in that sense, I'm a big believer in cutting-edge research. But what I'm finding, Ray, is that I seem to find is that the very discussion of the key dilemmas, in essence, is the same as really interesting research, knowledge generation research. I mean, outputs that are valid from a research point of view. So what we have done is to encourage the professors, the part-time professors, to write these things up. In other words, summarize the workshops. Right? You see some of that already in the Journal of Higher Education. It's coming. So I agree with you. But I guess I shouldn't say, but you mentioned Socrates and you mentioned Kierkegaard. By the way, he had 4 offices, one in each corner, and he could only work on one problem at a time. So he ran every day from office to office, 8 hours per day, and he was a priest, He was believing in God, but he had inherited a lot of money, and he died just when the money was finished. He was an extremely productive guy, as we know, and he too said, so did Socrates, said, teaching and research are 2 sides of the same coin. Go ahead.
Peter, you mentioned at length, in terms of the business school of the future, about how it will be taught.
Yeah.
I want to push you on what will be taught. You
Yes.
mentioned about increasing specialisation.
Yes.
I'm interested, the
Absolutely.
In the general public,
No,
the
you're-
idea of a general management qualification,
Yep.
the MBA, is
Yep.
prevalent. That's
Yep.
what people will think
Yep.
about when they think about business schools.
Yep.
But is the MBA dead?
Yes, I think largely so. And let me say it this way, and again, this is a cop-out, I'm saying, this is in the book. There's a hell of a lot in the book on, should we say, the design of the curriculum. And I remember when I was a professor at Wharton, we spent semesters on debating this and that small change in the curriculum for the MBA program. I said, that's horseshit. We have to move fast so that the curriculum all the time is cutting edge, as good as we know. And then some people say, how can that be done? Again, I'm sorry to say, I think that has a lot to do with the person at the top. That he or she, that's what he or she must be able to do, together with keeping should we say, a civilized we culture in the thing, in the place. And very often these people at the top are glorified nonsense types, have no understanding of changing the curriculum or no willingness to. And partly they don't want to touch the turf of all the professors, so it becomes very. But in my opinion, I think this is a very key issue. I cannot give a better answer than that. Perhaps I can add one more thing I discussed in the book. It's very, very important, in my opinion, that the person at the top has a network for herself or himself with advisors, so that he or she gets some inputs on the curriculum. Again, he or she can discuss. There's all kinds of things to discuss, but that's one of the 2 or 3 key jobs of the person at the top. So for instance, I'm chairing the International Advisory Board of SIEVS, and this is, and they say we need a person so-and-so who's so-and-so famous. I said, no, we need only people here who have viewpoints on our curriculum. So that's not a good answer, but at least worth thinking about. And you as a politician should challenge some of these damn universities and ask, who are the people on your advisory board? And they just give you all kinds of sirs and lords and God knows what. I'm saying, so what? Are these people who can really contribute to cutting edge curriculum stuff? That's what matters, in my opinion. Sorry. Go ahead, Ray.
Study on change management.
Yep.
They concluded that you need 3 kinds of visionary at the top. Well, the first one has the vision.
Yep. As we discussed.
Probably your institution. Yes. So someone has to see the direction of travel.
Yeah.
But then you need a political fixer.
Yes.
Someone who can get the barriers out of the way for that.
Yes.
Travel to happen. And then the third person they identified was, or a third function was, you need someone who minds the shop on a day-to-day basis and knows the operational minutiae. But what he did say is he'd never met anyone who could do all 3 well.
No.
Can you do all 3 well?
I can relate to that very much, and I have always seen that. For many years I've had a kind of a day-to-day manager, who a guy called Jim Ellert, who PhD from University of Chicago, finance man, and a kind of fantastic guy. So he's done a lot of that. But on the second point, the kind of political fixer, I think that easily shades over into the people at the top. And I had, as chairman, the head of the National Bank of Switzerland. And he said, Peter, you are not here to be popular. You are here to get the damn job done. His name was Fritz Leuthwiller. And then I said, what do you mean? He said, if there is a political problem or issue, as you see it, Peter, you have to react now, not swipe it under the table. So you know, if we had professors who, in a sense, said, sorry, we don't want to do this or that, I said, that's okay. We live in a free world, so please go somewhere else. Fertig los. And you know, some did. And we had also some young people who wanted a job at IMD, for instance, or at Lorange, and they said, how little can I teach so I can do more research? And I said, there's a door. And they said, what do you mean? Don't you understand that teaching and research is the same thing here? Aspects are the same. So if you think that you can succeed here and be helpful here to yourself and the team by only doing research and not teaching, you're not at the right place. And that's, in a sense, a political message. So I avoided getting loaded up with, should we say, political prima donnas through that. Maybe that's another job at the top, to try to steer clear of hiring decisions that turn out to be totally disastrous. You know? I think I haven't written about that. That's important. Go ahead.
My name is John King. I'm associate dean of Paradox School of Business and Law in London, East London.
Yeah.
One of the biggest issues that many business schools have, and to a certain extent, is they're often seen by the hierarchy, management teams and so on, as cash cows. They're the ones who cross-subsidise virtually every, not that I'm bitter about this, cross-subsidise an awful lot of other departments, which I won't mention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to a certain extent,
yes,
the management of a business school is controlled, restricted in what they do.
Yes.
And I just wondered if you had any comments on that. It's fine when a business school is an entity in its own
you're absolutely right.
But most of them are not.
What is your first name?
John.
John, you're absolutely right. And we had, I was a professor at Wharton for many years and was head of the Lauder Institute there for many years. And that was a big problem, that we were kind of milk dry from the rest of the university. and I hate to say it, but I'm discussing this in the book. And in my experience, the freestanding business schools tend to have a better chance. That's a little bit too sweeping. Because as you know, as you take, for instance, Stanford, there's no doubt that much of the greatness of Stanford, being part of Stanford University, has to do with the interplay between their medical school, their engineering school, and their business school, not the arts and science that were the traditional bloodsuckers. But there's no doubt that there's a lot going on there. Or I used to be a professor at MIT. There's no doubt that Sloan School benefited a lot from working with pure math and should we say the highly technical medical research. But the negative at Sloan, particularly, I never was at Stanford, but at Sloan it was a big negative that we were blood-sucked very heavily by the rest of the MIT in this case. So you're right. So, God, life is full of dilemmas. Here's one. Clearly you see Imperial College, this small business school there, is probably very, very much benefiting from being part of a fantastic technical university. But on the other hand, if the university becomes too greedy in milking that place dry, we have a problem. Sorry, John. Okay, we have to go for lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you. And as I said, this book is coming out, so blah, blah, blah about that. I guess I shouldn't say that here at Oxford. It's coming out at Cambridge University Press.